Hey, what's up, guys? It's Rico here, CEO of SourceFind Asia, co-host and manager of the podcast, host of the SourceFind Asia YouTube channel, back with another one in another Zoom epic podcast. We're sitting here with Alan Scanlan, frequent guest on the YouTube channel, the podcast. Alan, how's it going?
Good, man. Good. Yeah, can't complain. Life in Hong Kong isn't too bad, and what it seems to be compared to what it seems to be like in the rest of the world.
And of course, my co-host here, China Mike.
Hello, everybody. Can you talk more about the situation in Hong Kong? As we were talking before we got on the mic here about what's going on there, and I find it real interesting just being here in the States and trying to understand the situation. And things are still in pretty heavy lockdown. Most states have extended lockdowns. What's the situation looking like there?
I notice when I walk outside, I hope this pays off. One day I chose it, one day, someday I hope it. Went in the big labels and saw plaques on walls, but I didn't post it. Didn't want to gas or boast it, that's not one of the things I'm made of. But one day will it pay off? Mum says I got to do music, and Dad says to not quit my day job. It's a hard one still, it's not fake, the bars are real. Sometimes I can rely on people's advice, I can't rely on pills. I notice now, things keep falling down. When they fall I still build them up. Hard when you don't know how. Something's changed, yeah, you know the deal. At the end of the day, I'm over that one still. Over that once. When I play shows I'm sober at none. Not from London, no the accent. Not just talking, loads of action. Is this music or is it acting? One step forward then go backwards. Think it makes me over anxious. Things can change, it's known to happen. I feel like I don't need people's help, and then when I think about it I'm proud.
Yeah, I mean I've spoken about it loads with people here, how lucky we are that life hasn't really been that different. So you can't gather in more than 4 people outside. Restaurants are at 50% capacity. So like, I mean, there's a bit of issue getting into places when you go out for lunch or breakfast or whatever, but again, that's all completely understandable. Bars are closed, which I mean is a good thing for me. But yeah, I mean, life's pretty normal. Like we had the long weekend here, and we were out all weekend with friends. You're allowed to have more than 4 people, but it's just out in public. But then even like I was out for a run this morning around our park, so they've shut off the kind of little outside gyms, but there's still loads of people in them working out, and nothing's really said. And it's actually more local people as well. I think if there was Guilos in there, there'd be shouts at them. And then people running. Yeah, it's actually quite hard to run around the running track because there's so many people out there. Which again, I think with the fitness industry, I think people are making a big effort to try and get fitter and stay healthy. Which again, I think we've spoken about it before. I think the whole fitness industry after this will get even more ramped up in Asia than it currently is. But yeah, no, life's okay. Life's not too bad.
That's cool. You were telling us about the situation when you're entering into buildings there. In some cases, you have to sign a waiver. In other cases, they're at least checking your temperature almost everywhere you walk in. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, every restaurant you go into, they have their little station at the front where everyone checks your temperature. They have hand sanitizer. You have to wear a mask. You're not allowed into the restaurant or cafe if you're not wearing a mask. And then a lot of places will have you sign a waiver saying you haven't been traveling in the last 14 days. You haven't met anyone who has been traveling. But yeah, that pretty much any apartment block, not apartment block, any office block you walk into, or any commercial building, yeah, your thermometer is put at your head, and most places you have to sign a waiver. And the big thing is the masks. Like everyone in Hong Kong, apart from the odd person on the street, is wearing masks. And if you're not wearing a mask, like I go out for a run in the morning, and I'm not going to wear one to the park and back because it's 5 minutes away, and you get dirty looks from people of like, why you're not doing it. And I think, again, they're kind of, there's definitely been a few things going around about expats and Guaylos not wearing masks and local people not being too happy about it.
That's incredible that that's going to start to be the new standard for leaving your house.
Well, this I was saying to you before as well. I think a lot of countries are going to look at Hong Kong and look at them as an example. I mean, there's been 1,039 cases and only 4 deaths. And I mean, the only thing I can really think of is the main reason is the masks. From day one, people have been wearing masks, especially all the local people. And then ever since the spike that happened, I think it was in March, there was a spike from a lot of people coming back, a lot of local kids coming back from college and from university from the UK and from the US. So there was a spike then. And I mean, I'm talking like we went from 100 cases to 400 cases in a week, and everyone freaked out. And then everyone started wearing masks. So I put it down to that. And I think a lot of people will look at it. I mean, we've spoken about it before and why we've gotten into the PPE game. A lot of countries aren't telling people to wear masks because they don't have the supply, where in Asia, it's a very common thing. So all pharmacies would sell them anyway. So it's like if people feel unwell in Hong Kong, they wear a mask all the time. So yeah, I definitely see it. Once the supply can get to these places, I think they'll be pushed on the general public more.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, the numbers you said, considering how condensed of a city Hong Kong is, how it just completely relies on public transit, and you're just constantly next to people at all times.
And it's on China's doorstep.
Exactly.
Hong Kong would essentially be like a New York situation, right? New York got hit the worst in the States. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, again, when you kind of listen to podcasts and people who don't really know what they're talking about, they keep saying one of the main reasons that it's spread so much in New York is because it's so condensed and everyone's on top of each other. But I mean, Hong Kong is even more condensed than New York.
Yeah.
And it's definitely like when you're out in the streets, you're beside people all the time. And I don't think it's like that all over New York, maybe most parts of Manhattan. But I think it's the masks that have helped Hong Kong a huge amount. And also they because of SARS in 2003, they've gone through this, so straight away they took it seriously, whereas a lot of places seem to have started taking it seriously too late.
Yeah.
I think also is it South Korea had some similar situation where they had a virus, I think it was like last year, and they had some protocols that they put in place. So
they had across South Korea and Taiwan also.
Yeah. So they've had a pretty low infection rate as well.
The testing in those two places has been phenomenal. They had drive-through testing going on, where they were just people were pulling up in their cars, which is that seems to be the way that it's being controlled, where they have had larger outbreaks of it.
Yeah, and then when they notice a positive case, they just really isolate that person.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody that's been infected directly? My connection's unstable, by the way, so I don't know if you guys can still hear me.
I can hear you. Do I know? I know someone who in New Zealand who had it. No one in Hong Kong. No one in Hong Kong directly. Friends of friends who've had it here. I had a friend who came back. He was in Phuket and he had to come back and go through the quarantine. So he had to get this electronic wristband put on, and it's monitored by the police. And he basically had to rent an Airbnb because he lived with someone. So he had to rent an Airbnb in Mongkok, and I've lost Rico.
I know a few people we think that they had it just based off how sick they got. Yeah. And a lot of people were saying when they got super sick, like it knocked out their taste buds. Have you heard that?
Everyone that I've heard who've got it, their smell and their taste buds.
Exactly.
So, a few of Charlotte's friends in London got it, and they couldn't smell or taste for days. And then one of her friends in New Zealand, and she couldn't smell anything. Yeah, which is interesting. But none of them got really sick. They were all like, they felt a bit shitty, but not really bad. I've heard a friend of a friend again in London, and he said his mate had for about 5 days thought he was going to die, just said he was like in bits, and just stayed in his apartment and then was fine.
Yeah, same thing that happened to my friend. He was even a little longer, like a full week in the house. He said he couldn't even move, didn't want to eat anything, but after that he was cool.
No one I know directly in Hong Kong who's had it. A friend of mine who came back from Phuket had to go into the lockdown, so he had to get the electronic wristband, and then he rented an apartment in Bangkok because he lived with someone. So basically, when you get to your apartment, you've got to walk around your perimeter, which tracks it all on the band, and then you're kind of locked in for 2 weeks. And if you leave the apartment, the cops are notified. So he had that on, and then as well, my girlfriend's dad had one as well, that he had to stay in his apartment for 2 weeks. Now, he arrived in the day before, or the day of the actual official lockdown, and his wristband didn't work for the 2 weeks, so he could have left, but he like just did the responsible thing and stayed in. But there was like cases of people who were caught out in the streets with it on, and like local people screaming at them and like going mad that they were doing it. So and then a couple of Charlotte's friends in London and one in New Zealand got it, and as I was saying to Mike before, their smell and their taste went, but they didn't get really sick. They just had that issue for a few days.
I don't know anyone directly, but I know that this girl I know in China, she went to a restaurant, and she was at like one of the popular restaurants in Zhejiang, Yutang, and the waitress, the next day she gets a phone call from, I guess, somebody from the CDC in China, and was like, hey, the waitress that served you yesterday tested positive for COVID-19. You have to come and be quarantined for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and be tested. So yeah, they basically took her 2 days later, and with everybody that was in that restaurant. So they kind of tracked when that waitress had her shift and who she interacted with through, and then they all put them into a ambulance, and they had the hazmat people come through their apartment, and she got tested 2-3 days later. Luckily she tested negative, but they still kept her in quarantine for 2 weeks after that. Yeah, so it was like kind of a weird, just hearing somebody's firsthand account. And then she was staying in one of these hotels where they had both foreigners and Chinese people that were all in quarantine. And she said it was pretty normal, apart from the fact that, you can interact with people, and it's like social distancing in the restaurants and everything. And then, yeah, she was like, she said the foreigners were complaining more than than the Chinese people, which I guess would be normal.
Yeah.
In the same way they're out with the anklets in Hong Kong, they just can't help themselves.
Well, a lot of the cases of the people with the bracelets out in Hong Kong were all local people.
Oh, okay. They're local Hong Kongese people?
Yeah. So the one I heard was a father and a daughter were out having dinner, I think, or they were out in the street, and it was the daughter had one on. So some guy saw it, started screaming at her in Cantonese, going, "What are you doing? You're out," and then telling everyone around. So they started walking, and this guy followed her for ages. They tried to get in a cab, and he started shouting at the taxi driver, going, "She's got a bracelet on, shouldn't be out." And the taxi driver was like, "I'm not taking you, get out of my cab." And he followed them the whole way home until they got to their apartment. And apparently the dad eventually turned around and was like, "We won't come back out. We won't come back out." So, yeah, it's just crazy, I think. And as well, I'm just like, if you've got one of those bracelets on and you're going to go outside, would you not just wear a long sleeve top and just cover it up? Like,
yeah, there's definitely ways around that. Like, if you leave your area wearing the bracelet, like, what happens? They arrest you? Like, Will you get fined?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big fine. I have 25,000 Hong Kong dollars in my head. If you get caught, if you're prosecuted, and I heard the last I heard, which was a while ago now, there was 6 or 7 people had been prosecuted, who just weren't obeying by it. So yeah, there was quite a hefty fine, and they have to put that in place, right? Because if they don't have a fine, everyone just walks around with it anyway. Because it's the same as anywhere. You're going to have people who just think this isn't an issue and can walk around or don't think they have it, and are going to go around spreading it. But yeah, I just heard that. I heard about 6 or 7 being prosecuted, and then of course, there's people who are actually put into the official quarantine areas. So there was like rooms in apartment blocks or whatever it was that were made up for them, and you're stuck in there for your 2 weeks, and they supply you with food and toiletries and things like that.
Transitioning to the business side of things, like when and how did you first get into the PPE product? With us, obviously.
Was it about 6 weeks ago when you messaged me? I think maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, talking about all these requests from the US when you were...
Yeah, roughly. It was like end of March, like last week of March.
Yeah. And there was these guys on looking for hundreds of millions of masks and wanting them now and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it was then that we started looking at things, and it's funny because I think at the start it was nearly more interesting to keep busy because things had gone so quiet with everything else. And then obviously learning about all this stuff, like learning about the masks, learning about the certificates, trying to locate the factories, making sure they're all legit. Obviously, I think I read recently there's been 35,000 new PPE factories have opened up since this has all started. So like you're trying to figure out who's trying to rip you off and who's
that's the official number, because I mean, it's like even the factories that haven't registered are producing PPE products right now.
Yeah. Oh, so it's 35,000 that have registered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, we have like just talking to some of our suppliers for other products like electronics, toys, they all started making masks the last month and a half, so.
When we got involved in that fidget spinner project, a lot of factories like repurposed just to do the spinners, but this is fidget spinners on steroids, man. Just everybody that had some sort of similarity to anything in production with the PPE equipment, like like the diaper factories or some other factories making similar type products, they all converted immediately.
Well, it was like I think maybe about a week or 10 days before you approached me, Rico, I was getting emails. I was getting 4 or 5, 6 emails every day going, we're making masks. This is what we're doing. Keep safe. And I was kind of going, this is all a bit weird that all these factories, I was getting like random factories messaging me who make completely different products. I think the way it's kind of shifted and the way I suppose our business model has shifted from the start as well has been quite interesting, from having these massive requests from, like, remember that billionaire from America who wanted 300 million masks, and but they're like, I'm not paying deposits, because like the roadblocks, I suppose, has been challenging, but it's been good as well. And all these people who don't know how to deal with China, and they were like, why would I pay a deposit? Why can't you finance for like this $10 million order type of thing? So dealing with all that has definitely been challenging. And the way I suppose we've kind of pivoted to our business model and buying the stock ourselves and having kind of control of that has been good as well. And that's, I mean, we can lead into it in a bit about my family business and what they're doing. And like, it was the same thinking from my brother, who was like, we want to have stock here because then people can see it. They don't want to have to deal with buying from China. They'll be able to drive up to the warehouse, load up their van, and that's it. And not dealing with buying 100,000 pieces, 200,000 pieces sort of thing.
For us, it was like just the beginning was trying to get buyers to, one, understand China, but also to trust us. Like, I think they're kind of looking at us as an extension of the factory, which to a certain extent we are, but usually when we talk to buyers, they're looking at us as the ones that they trust to make sure that things go according to plan. So it was kind of a weird position at the beginning, and I think that kind of led us to being like, like if we're going to get these products to the US, we probably have to take some initiative and do it ourselves.
Most of the customers that we come in contact with already have some idea of who we are and are vetted a little bit. So when they come to us, it's for added security to the manufacturing process. So to have people kind of think of you as a roadblock is a big change of pace, and dealing with all these people with these giant requests, like you were mentioning, Alan, but don't have any sense of what is really happening first and foremost, but then also don't have a lot of experience dealing with China.
Yeah.
So,
and we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, where it's funny. Before, people want to use SourceFind Asia or Newland Sourcing to source goods because they go, these guys are in China, know what they're talking about, have dealt with factories, and they have the trust issue with the factory. But then all of a sudden there's been a trust issue with us as well, and sort of going like, why should we trust you? And that's been a huge roadblock. But I think with a lot of these orders, with people you have people trying to jump in, trying to make a quick buck, and then you have people just not trusting all sides of the scenario because there's so much money involved and it's so unknown. And then, of course, all these people are getting ripped off with dodgy gear out of China as well. Like, there's been all the stories that have been reported. But yeah, it's definitely been difficult to get orders over the line.
A lot of conversations for not a lot of successful closes.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I think that we're like, again, back to kind of the business model that we're kind of looking at now, and it's very similar to what my family business are going to do with buying in the stock, wholesaling it out of the warehouse, having a sales team. Like, I think that's it's more of the norm and it's more what people are used to. So, and you're going to have, again, like as well, the way things are run here in Hong Kong, I think a lot of people are going to look at. So companies will bring staff back, either working in 2 shifts or working a week on, week off. Everyone is given masks. Everyone is given hand sanitizer. There's the social distancing, because all these things will be in place for businesses to open back up, all these restrictions. So I think if we're in a situation to go, people can come along and buy a box or 2 boxes, it just makes life a lot easier.
With your family business, you're saying that there just isn't that much PPE products in Ireland right now?
Yeah.
At the moment?
I've seen reports of, I think, about 200 million euros worth of goods being bought into Ireland, but it's all been for hospitals and medical use. From the research we've done, no one's got masks. Some pharmacies have masks, but the reason they're saying they have stock is because no one's out. So no one's leaving their house. So no one's going to the pharmacy to buy masks. But they said once people do start going out, they'll run out of stock very quickly. And as far as I'm aware, it's very similar in the UK, with just a lack of supply for the general population. Charlotte's brother is a doctor in Edinburgh, and he says, like, medical staff are wearing bandanas and scarves around their face. Like, they don't have equipment, and they're not being supplied equipment or they're being told they don't need it. But
it sounds like the US, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. And then all the stuff that is coming into the UK goes straight to London.
What's crazy is even just the way the EU, we've been dealing now with the whole CE certification thing, right? So the way the EU is responding to this in terms of the certifications is quite similar to the CDC 6 weeks ago. But then I feel like I don't see any movement in terms of them coming up with a new standard for the current situation. So it's extremely difficult to export product to Europe. I mean, did I tell you about we had a 1,000 unit order to Denmark?
No.
Did I tell you what happened with it? Yeah.
Nope.
So through one of the investors in our COVID coalition, like it was a friend of his who basically gathered up a bunch of people within his friend circle, friends and family type thing, and they put together an order for about 1,000 masks. And there was a couple of different issues with that. Like it was like the payment arrived 5-7 days after he'd sent it, so we took a while, but production was fine. The shipping took, like similar to the investment group, the shipping took like 2 weeks plus to get to Denmark, because once DHL had picked up the goods, they pretty much stayed in the DHL warehouse for like 7 to 10 days, and then customs took a while. But once it arrived in Denmark, the Danish customs took the goods aside for further inspection, which is normal. It's happened to all of our goods going to States, but they were like, oh, these masks are. First of all, they changed it. It was supposed to be a friends and family shipment, and they said that this is going to a business address. So we think that you're going to sell these. And then 2, they were saying, oh, these masks don't match the CE requirements. And he was like, well, like it's a personal shipment, so I don't think that should be an issue. And they just he had to basically convince them over a day and a half, 2 days, and it was like, even for a personal shipment of goods. Yeah, it was just really, really difficult. Luckily, he ended up getting the product out, and I think he just had to pay. No, he didn't have to pay any additional taxes, but yeah, it was just
here in the States. I mean, some of these shipments that we've sent here has only been a box, but if it's over X number of dollars, I feel like the 2 different carriers, DHL and UPS, gave me a different amount, but it was over $500 maybe, and you had to fill out long forms, all tax ID information, detailed information about the, where you bought the goods, all the factory information, all the information on the product. It was something I've never seen especially for such a small shipment like that.
Do you think we'll have any issues then with the order going into Ireland?
Maybe it'll be a similar type thing where it just requires a lot more paperwork and authorization in order to get it across the board. But really just don't know until it gets there, unfortunately.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with Ireland, it's a sea shipment. I think air shipments are probably way more strict. But yeah, no, it's like Mike said, it's like with everything that we're doing right now, there's so much uncertainty. At what stage do you think the EU relaxes or comes up with a new standard? Because it seems like they went the opposite direction from the CDC. Like they went super strict and basically said, 90% of factories don't qualify to export to Europe.
I mean, it's such a hard one because I mean, there was the 600,000 KN95 masks that were rejected from Holland, I think it was, and I think there was issues with them. I know Ireland's had some issues with gowns, but the gowns were it wasn't the quality, it was the sizing. They'd all arrived in. The arms were all short on them, so I'd imagine they made Chinese sizes rather than European sizes. Yeah, it's such a hard thing, right? Because people need this stuff quickly, and they need to get it out and manufacture quickly. But then, if they're making it harder and harder and harder for people to get it in, it's just not going to happen. Even with the contact of mine from the other day from the Ministry of Defence in the UK, and they're looking for their COC reports, and again, they've kind of set their own standards. And they're saying we can't do anything unless that is, and that's the problem. It seems that you have the European standard, and then each country is coming out with their own standard, saying, "Oh, this is what we want." And same with businesses; they're all reading articles or being told information, and then setting standards themselves, and that's causing roadblocks again and just more hassle.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, unrealistic standards based off the factors that are available.
Yeah,
or not realistic for the immediate term. It'll take them quite a bit of time to be able to meet all those requirements.
Yeah, I mean, even with that Musgraves order, that they were looking for 1 million pieces, and they wanted a 3-ply medical mask, whatever standard the EN standard they wanted. And I went back and asked them, I was like, do you need these? Because they're a wholesale company. They're a large wholesale company, so they sell into businesses and restaurants. And I was asking, do you not just need a civilian mask? Do you need a medical one? And they were like, no, this is the standard we need. But it wasn't for medical use. And they were like, we need to wear these for 4 hours. So this is the standard we need. And like trying to explain to them, like, you can wear the 3-ply civilian one for 3 hours. Like it's if you don't need it for medical or for like in a hospital, you don't need them. But again, someone's told them that, and that's come from the top of their business, and that's what they're sticking to.
Yeah. Yep, that's the other issue we're dealing with is just like most people that are buying the products are not experts in the standards and the product, which is also an unusual situation to be in. So it's like sometimes the things that they're requesting are either not realistic or unreasonable. Yeah,
and dealing with the layers of people as well. So if you're dealing with like a contact has come to me going, I have someone who wants this order, and then I'm going like we're having a conversation about it, and we're getting pricing and going back, and it's going to 2, 3, 4 layers of people, and then again people like adding in pricing and adding in their markup, and just the way, I mean, I suppose the message is even conveyed back to them. It's a lot more complicated, and then you've got the people in that chain who don't know what they're talking about because they've never dealt in this stuff. I mean, we've only been dealing in 6 weeks, and we're hardly experts, but we know a lot more than most people because you're reading about it every day and you're looking into it every day, and you can tell the difference between masks. And like I got a message from a guy recently going, I need masks and gowns for the HSE in Ireland. And I was like, what type of masks and gowns? And he said CE and FDA masks and gowns. And it's like, when you're getting that kind of information, it's like, and he's got a friend of a friend who's contacted him, and they've got a contact and they'll buy it all. And it's just like, okay, you very quickly start knocking off the tire kickers.
And you have a lot of people who are confident in what they don't know as well, or what they think they know, I should say.
Yeah. I didn't hear back from that guy when I went back with an email asking all these questions. I haven't heard back from him 3 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, that's also been an interesting aspect of this, is just dealing with people that we usually don't talk to. Like, we have such a good filtration system when it comes to leads. That now it's like we're just dealing with a lot of people that are either time wasters or, don't know what they're doing, or, probably just have stuff in place, stuff that they think they have in place that they don't really have in place. It's like, it's a crazy world. How's
the rest of the business going? Do you have many people on to you looking for other goods? Is there any other businesses? I know we've spoken about it before, like the gym equipment has been a bit crazy. It's another big in demand item. But has there been many people on looking for quotes and samples and things like that?
Yeah, you mean just the normal?
Just in general,
yeah. Actually, I mean, it's definitely slowed down 6 weeks ago. Like, we definitely had a couple clients that we were working with who were like, hey, I'm gonna have to put the project on pause for a couple of weeks. Yeah, the one client that was a relatively large consulting fee that was supposed to be a 3 to 4 month product ODM product production. Sample production, and he pretty much disappeared. Like, we haven't heard from him, this entire time. We reached out to him a bunch of times, so we had to put that on hold. But we had some long-term projects, like for example, Buddha, which is actually a yoga brand. They have commitments because they have backers from their Kickstarter campaign. So we've pushed on with that. And then we had a couple other ODM projects that are just ongoing that have actually transitioned. I think last week, I was telling Mike I had to pay for 3 different molds for original design. So that's kicking on. But yeah, I would say we're probably in the internal SFA stuff. We're probably running at about 60% of most of our projects. The rest of the other projects on hold, but we've definitely been interacting with a lot of people. I think the sales cycle takes longer now, just feel like people are taking a bit longer to move forward or pay, you know?
Yeah.
Love you guys.
I mean, the sourcing side, yeah, it's gone really quiet. And the family business side with the Bailey and Brook brand, obviously trade shows have all been canned. In Hong Kong, they're saying that they're going to have a big trade show in July, 25th of July. So it's going to be all 4 shows basically into one. But yeah, we've had two orders from that, and everything else is just non-responsive from people. And then all the newer leads of again people are just not buying anything at the moment. With Earned, it's been okay, like ticking along with sales, but nothing crazy. We're actually launching a new product today. Aqua bag, so it's like a piece of gym equipment that you fill up with water. It's kind of like a sandbag that you fill up with water. So we're kind of hoping that will get a bit of traction. We've had like a lot of response from that, from the posts we put out so far. So launch that today, and then we're going to start running our ad campaigns again, which we've shut off, and have a site-wide sale as well to try kind of push some stock before our next launch in June. But yeah, I mean, it's been mainly the PPE stuff that's been keeping me busy. And the Earned stuff is just kind of ticking along. Like, we're in a kind of good position, I think, with the Earned, in regards to the next launch. I think in Hong Kong, I think by June, things will be a lot better here, even more so. And then we also did a bit of a raise, before all this kind of happened, and got some money in. So that will tide us by for new ranges and items that we're bringing out in the next year, I suppose. So yeah, it's all pretty good at the moment. I've launched a brand during the protests in Hong Kong and the coronavirus. Absolutely shittest timing that's ever happened. But apart from those 2 incidents, it's been great.
Yeah. No, it'd be interesting to see the amount of businesses that launch during this whole time period. Because when I was talking to Mike before, I was like, I watched a documentary a while ago, which was about the amount of entrepreneurs that came out of the 2008 financial crisis. This is like when people lose their jobs and don't have a way of making money, or don't have jobs available that they can get. They usually get creative and come up with a lot of different business ideas. Especially now, I think what's going to be interesting is with the 2008 one, there's a lot of people that were opening up like their own restaurants or coffee shops or delivery bakery thing.
Yeah.
Now I think it's going to be more people jumping online. Like, I think it's going to be more companies themselves setting up online and remote work systems, but just entrepreneurs figuring out how they can make money while being at home.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had this conversation with a few people, and I'm really intrigued to see the changes, see what industries are going to explode. Like in China, like online education, working from home, the gym industry, all these things I can see absolutely skyrocketing. But like you said, a lot of people shifting online. I'm so happy that we don't have a retail store or anything like that, because again, I think that industry was dying before this, but it's going to be hit even harder. It's going to be really interesting to see how people kind of pivot and change and different ideas and concepts they come up with. And I think I remember after 2008, the amount of breweries and distilleries that opened in Ireland was insane. Craft beer. It went from about 30 craft beer companies that no one had heard about or drank to about 200 in about 3 or 4 years. It just exploded. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it'd be really interesting. And then also the amount of, during a normal recession, like this is going to lead on to a long recession, and during a normal recession, 25% of businesses crash. So I think like a lot of industries, you're going to look at closer to 50% could go under. So there's going to be a lot of market space for people to take up, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people who are in a good position now and who don't have a lot of debt to buy up to buy up competition and to add other brands to their business.
Yeah, even real estate, and like some of the companies that are stable long term that you could buy stock in that are going to bounce back in 2-3 years. Unfortunately, when things like this happen, there's a lot of opportunities for the people that have the funds to capitalize on the situation, or the means at least.
Yeah. A friend of mine who works for Morgan Stanley was telling me that 72% of the world population will be worse off financially after this. So you have your 28% who will be fine, and then your whatever 3% of that 28 who'll make an absolute killing. Morgan Stanley are about to announce their best ever quarter in the history of the business.
And out of that 3%, 50% of that is in China.
Yeah. I was thinking about the other day because I read an article, the company who supplies the raw material for the masks. So there was some guy who's involved in that, and his net worth's gone up like 1.2 billion quid or something like that. But the factories in China, like the margins and the quantities that they're going through, and I suppose the margins are getting smaller and smaller, but there's a lot of factory owners who are making a lot of money.
There's just a mass transfer of wealth happening from the rest of the world going into mainland, and I'm curious to see what the numbers are going to be in terms of the amount of millionaires and billionaires that come out of this in mainland China. But not even just millionaires or billionaires, but even like people that make six figures, just $500,000, $800,000 in the space of a month or 2 months. Like, there's just going to be a huge wealth class that comes out of this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the middle class was growing. What was it? It's growing by 5 million a year in China.
Yeah,
I think at the moment. So and China are going to be the ones who are going to recover quickest from all of this. And the likes of Hong Kong who've handled it well, like they'll be the ones to eventually come out of it quicker. But there's definitely a lot of people making a lot of money.
Been interesting to see that mainland China, of all places, has such little stimulus or government assistance being provided to businesses or people at large. In the States, they've been cutting people checks. I mean, within a week, businesses were, requesting billions of dollars from the government. But the Chinese approach has been more like, the strong will survive, basically.
But the problem is with America, them cutting checks, they're just devaluing the dollar so much, and it just becomes worthless. And then all these, like there was, I just read a headline there yesterday, I think in Bloomberg, none of the small to medium-sized businesses that needed that money got any from the first bailout. So was it Shake Shack or Five Guys? I think it was Five Guys got $10 million. And they're not in any trouble whatsoever. And everyone started giving out stink about it. And then they gave the money back why are they applying for it in the first place? Like, they're in no trouble whatsoever. And that's the problem in America. It looks like they're just taking care of the bigger companies and not the small guys, which is the mass majority of companies out there.
Which is always the case.
Yeah.
It's always. Yeah. All right. Alan, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to touch on?
No, that was, the main topic was just the PPE, right? And how we got into it. And I suppose the longevity of all this, and how long we see this going on for. At first I thought it was going to be quite a short game. But the more I think about it, the more I think people, it's going to become a bit more of a norm to have masks. A lot of businesses are going to have regulations in place to open. So I definitely think you'll have that supply going into your everyday company. which is again why like the way we've kind of pivoted, I think makes sense, and what the family business is doing, it kind of makes sense as well. So like I can definitely see this going on for the next, I mean, like in America, it's going on for the next 9+ months. I think you're going to have a big spike come flu season, especially if they're opening everything up again. So yeah, I think more of a long-term play on selling the masks and having a distribution setup is the way forward.
Yeah. If there are spikes in the US and other places, that'll kind of guarantee the longevity of the business and needing this equipment. But I think there's going to be all kinds of opportunities, like you were saying, not just with distancing products and moving to online platforms, but in that you're going to need to monitor that's how they're going to suggest that we handle this issue, is to monitor the population more. They go back into buildings. Obviously, what you've experienced in Hong Kong, it works and it's effective in keeping your face covered. So
the other one actually I meant to mention to you guys is the ceramic screens that they have in restaurants here. So if you sit at a table and say the table fits 6 people, they have one of those just a plastic screen blocking you from the other people, and they have them in a lot of perspex, and they have them in a lot of restaurants here. And then there's talk about, say you go into an office block and there's a reception desk, and they'll have it around the reception desk, so to stop again the spread. So like you can my brother was just talking about this. They're you can get ones purposely made up for companies, but you can also get generic ones that just go on a table. So, and a lot of restaurants are doing that in Hong Kong. So maybe that's again something that will be in demand in the US.
Yeah, and then those that I don't know when. Well, I guess they said May, but there's that spray that has a 3-month, like it kills the virus, and then it lasts for 3 months.
Yeah.
If that's real, if that becomes a widespread thing, I think that's going to be pretty huge, not just in Hong Kong, but globally. Like, I'm talking to the guy that approached me here in the Philippines about it. Like, he was like, you would pay whatever, to have that and be able to spray his office with, and protect that from COVID for 3 months.
Yeah, that'd be huge in the gym industry as well.
For sure.
All right, man. Alan, if people want to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
Newlandsourcing.com and Alan at newlandsourcing.com would be the best way for all the sourcing business. And then anything earned related, earnedathleticapparel.com, and same handle as well for our Instagram account.
Nice.
Yeah. Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
If you guys want to reach out to us, that's podcast@sourcefinasia.com, sourcefinasia.com/made in China for the Made in China podcast episodes. And of course, the YouTube is Sourcefine Asia, all one word. Cheers.
Peace.
Still more scared than I ever been. Still feel blessed like I never sinned. Am I going in circles for a peace that doesn't exist? I feel sick.